During World War II, a hardly recognized campaign against the Japanese took place in the great state of Alaska. This campaign, known as the Forgotten War of the Aleutians, was fought to halt the advance of the Japanese army eastward on the Aleutian Island chain. The advance would have given them a strong hold on American soil had they reached the Alaskan mainland. It was during one mission in 1943 that a B-24 Liberator was forced to make a crash landing on Great Sitkin Island due to severe weather conditions and a dwindling fuel supply. 50 years later, a team of Air Force reservists from the 419th CLSS, the 67th Aerial Port Squadron, and 4 members on the Hill Aerospace Museum Foundation undertook a mission. The team left Hill Air Force Base, Utah on July 10, 1995 and arrived at Adak Naval Air Facility on Adak Island, Alaska. From there, they took a ship called the Polar Bear to Great Sitkin Island, where they found a daunting task before them. Because of rocks and the massive amount of kelp in the water, the Polar Bear could not make a beach landing. Instead, they anchored offshore. Once in place, the team began breaking down the pallets containing their equipment. Retired Major General Rex Hadley of the Museum Foundation was the coordinator of the mission.
It is our responsibility as a foundation to go out, seek these aircraft, find out where they are, and pay for the cost of recovery and restoration. In 1993, early 93, we heard about aircraft in the Alaska region and the number of aircraft that were crashed up here during what is often called the Forgotten War of the Aleutians. We came up in April of 93 and we purchased at that time the remains of a P-40. Now here today we are recovering this B-24, which we hope to restore. We will restore and put in the museum at Hill. We found the aircraft and we hiked up to it. We determined that it was feasible to recover it. There are 10,256 B-24s made in World War II. There are less than 10 of these B-24s remaining. We are trying to recover one of those historical artifacts so that future generations might enjoy it at Hill Air Force Base, Utah.
Ernest Pruitt, who was asked to come along on the trip, was the pilot who flew the Liberator in for its fateful landing on that day back in 1943.
Leading up to January 18th, 1943, when this crash occurred, we were a B-24 outfit, and I had a crew, and our mission was to bomb Kiska and Attu as we were sent out. And we were on alert all morning on the 18th, but we couldn't get off because of weather. Low ceilings at ADAC and also at Kiska. But finally in the afternoon, about 2:30, we had enough ceiling we could get off. 6 of us cranked up, Captain Moore leading. We went to Kiska. One aircraft lost an engine shortly after takeoff, and he returned and landed. Another one shortly after that came in, but the fog had settled in to where he could barely find the runway, and he crashed and also took out 2 P-38s. They left 4 of us out, and we got to the target with 4, but it was socked in where you couldn't even see the Kiska Bay, Little Kiska, which was our dropping point. So Captain Moore said, well, we'll return to base. And he and I got back in the Great Sitkin Bay here, and we were circling, trying to get into ADAC, but it was fogged in. A lot of ships around. So, but that time though, we had lost 2 other aircraft, and talking now, some years later, no one knows just what happened, but they were lost in the weather. Made Moore, the captain, leader of our flight, he had been the leader, and he had enough gas to get north to Cold Bay. And we broke radio silence. He did, told him what he's going to do, and I did, that I was going to belly in my aircraft off Great Sitkin, because in the meantime, we had enough visibility, a couple hundred feet, and we'd found the area and made a couple of passes and decided on a way we were going to do it. We came in, wheels up, and here's what's left. As we came to a halt, and you know, it's the only crash landing I'd ever been in. And you know, in the B-24, you normally have the bomb bay doors open to get in and out. And the best I can remember, we went out through pilot or co-pilot's window. We're up through the hatch, which is above where the navigator operates. But I'm not real sure at this point just how we did it. But everyone was active and got out okay except Haskell, the bombardier. And we had to help him, but again, I don't remember how we got him out. The worst of the whole trip was going from the aircraft side down, carrying the man on a stretcher, going down to meet the destroyer that the Navy had sent to pick us up. This is the second time in 3 days now that I've been to the aircraft site, and it's a tragic view to see the crumpled aircraft, the bad shape it's in. Of course, it's been here 50 years, but nevertheless, there's been some other salvaging done, which is tragic. And it really tore me apart to see what has been done to the aircraft, but I'm sure that with the efforts the group I'm here with will be able to take it out, and it'll eventually be in the Hill Air Force Museum. And I'm very glad to be a part of it.
Work began to move the wreckage piece by piece down to the beach for loading onto the Polar Bear. Pieces of the aircraft were towed to the beach using cable and the winches aboard the ship. The cables were stretched and spliced the entire distance between the ship and the crash site. Master Sergeant Paul Cragen was a team leader on the mission.
One of the first things that we attempted to do when we came up here was set up a loop system with a cable, kind of like on a ski lift, where we had one cable going up the hill, pulling up equipment, and another cable coming back down, pulling parts of the aircraft back down. We found out consequently that the cable that we were using was twisting on us significantly and causing a lot of trouble. We broke the cable numerous times, and we did encounter a couple of injuries. Luckily, they were slight injuries. We learned our lesson on that. Now we found that pulling the long distance, we've gone to just a single cable system where we just make one cable drag up the hill, hook onto the airplane part, and drag it back down the hill.
Loading the pallets was a lot of work. Using nothing more than a few hand tools and the strength of their bodies, the men readied the sections for transport. Once the pieces of the wreck were loaded onto the pallets and strapped down, the long haul to the beach began. The wings had to be flipped over onto their tops where the surface was smoother. This would reduce the amount of friction and make dragging the wing easier. Due to the sheer weight of the wings, they had to be flipped over with the aid of the winches aboard the Polar Bear.
Find though that when we come to the bluff here on the island, we've got about a 45-foot drop down onto the beach. Once we get it over that, then we've got all these rocks that we have to contend with, putting the parts across the beach and then into the water. Well, now we've got about a 150 yard patch of water that we've got to get across, and we're finding out the only way that we can do that is with these buoys that the skipper Peters had on the Polar Bear. We've kind of commandeered them from him, and we're using them to hook onto the parts. We've sent 2 engines across the water already. They went over real successfully.
When the wreckage reached the Polar Bear, the front ramp was lowered into the water and then used to lift the sections into the ship. Each section that made it aboard was a small victory for the recovery team. 2 trips between Great Sitkin and Adak had to be made to transport the equipment for the return to Hill Air Force Base. Upon arrival at Adak, the Navy provided personnel and a crane to unload the Polar Bear. The 67th Aerial Port Squadron personnel then took charge of the plane to clean and prep it for loading onto a C-5 Galaxy. The plane was shipped to Hill Air Force Base, where it will be restored and placed on permanent display here at the Hill Air Force Base Aerospace Museum. Through the trials and accomplishments of each and every team member, a piece of our great American history has been salvaged for the enjoyment of generations to come. It is a reminder of all those who risked and gave their lives in the armed services in defense of our great country, even when they did so with little recognition.